Hello.
So hello everyone, I'm going to be hosting myself today. It's going to be fun, and I'm also going to be controlling the chat room as much as I can, probably at the end. So I'm going to say a very warm welcome to everyone who's here, and I know that people are going to be joining as I start speaking. So just a few things here as we start. So it's our regular expert talk series. And I decided to choose a theme which is very close to my heart, which is educator well-being, and we're going to jump into it in 1 or 2 minutes. A little bit of housekeeping before I do. So as I'll be hosting also, I'm not necessarily going to see the chat, so I'm going to review everything towards the end and have an interactive discussion with you on the topic that I bring today. I think the most important thing is the length. I'm going to try and keep it to around 35 minutes, okay, and then have a few minutes for Q&A. And after that, if there are any other questions, anything that you are interested to discuss, then I'm very happy to continue either in private or, I don't know, off the record or whatever in writing, okay? So we're going to be looking into a topic that I think has attracted a lot of interest lately. And we're going to look into it. I'm just checking whether there's anyone joining. Not yet. Okay. And so a little bit about us. We're the International Language Coaching Association. I'm sure that every one of you who is here knows who we are. And we've been running this expert talk for over, well, near 5 years now, I'd say. So regularly, every month or every second month, usually with the short summer break. But we've got at least, I don't know, I think we've got around 35 talks now altogether. So that's quite a good collection that we have. And one thing that we're definitely going to be excited about in the near future is going to be, of course, the conference coming up in Malaga. Hopefully I'll be seeing quite a lot of you in Spain in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's around 1 month now, so the countdown has started. We're very excited. And of course, we also have various courses that are coming up in the next few weeks, months. The field program in September, our nature-assisted coaching, which nature-inspired coaching experience, which starts July 8th. And of course, the conference, I keep coming back to that. Okay, so what are we going to be looking at today? We're going to be looking at how to future-proof our careers, which might sound quite a big bite for one session, but I'm sure that we're going to be able to cover some ground about it. But we're going to look at it through this well-being lens and how to be adaptive in the way that we approach our professional selves in a way. Okay, it's something that I've been exploring for the past 2-3 years, but obviously for a longer period of time too. And it's become more and more important in the conversations that I've had with a lot of you and a lot of my clients also. Whether I'm looking at my own language coaching, communication clients, from their professional development perspective, which means that they want to be better communicators, right? Somehow we always filter through how they are feeling in the work that they're doing, the way that they are communicating, the way that they are being communicated to. And that always offers a lot of insight into what they actually mean by their goals. So how they identify with their own goals and what they want to reach. So that and a lot of conversations with educators got me thinking, okay, so let's jump in. A couple of slides. I'm going to try and make it relatively short, okay? So what we're looking at here is whether well-being has one definition. If you look at this slide, just a quick nod or a shake of the head, what do you think? Does well-being have one definition? Okay, good. Right. Okay, I asked a very leading question here, not a coaching question at all, very leading question. Clearly, there isn't one definition. It really does depend on, again, the approach, where we are. Okay, I'm just omitting people here, sorry. Depending on where we are, what area, what field, what discipline we are coming at it from. If we look at it from a language education perspective, it's going to have a different definition than if we're looking at it from more of a health perspective. And of course, education in general might have a different sort of definition, whereas language education is going to be looking at it. I would say it's how the learner and the teacher feels well with each other and also separately in their roles, responsibilities, and the goals that they have, and how satisfied they are with their development, with their own resources, strengths that they have, how they try to strive and flourish and move forward together, but also separately. So it's also, for me, well-being is very much about role identity, understanding what I do, how I do it, why I do it, where I'm heading with what I want to achieve, and how I can accomplish that, and how I feel in the meantime. Now, of course, this isn't only an emotional feeling, but it's something which is very much coming from deep inside. And I'd also add one item, which is sustainability. So how sustainable this development, this growth, this feeling of well-being is. So I might feel okay one day and then not good the next in what I'm doing. Then probably I'm very inconsistent with my feeling of well-being. I might be experiencing a lot of fluctuations with how I am, how I work, how I approach my work, how I look at myself as a professional. There's no good or bad. So it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It just means that it's fluctuating, it's going up and down. I think what is very important, though, is to understand that well-being would be on the other side of the spectrum if we can experience well-being over a longer period of time. On the other side of the spectrum would be pull-out, burnout, right? So we're always going to be looking at the two ends of the spectrum, as one being the ideal and the other something that we want to avoid as much as possible. So when we want to work with well-being in mind, we also have that little devil there, right? So we have it on our shoulders. Oh, I don't want to burn out. I want to avoid it. I want to prevent everything to get into that sort of state. So it's just a very, very interesting way of looking at what we mean as language educators by well-being. And of course, the same thing applies to our learners. And as language coaches, what we do is we try to involve conversations. We bring in conversations about the well-being perspective of the learner in the learning process. Okay. I'm going to try and make it a bit more fun than this, but I did want to get this out. Okay, so I saw everyone looking at me very seriously, but hopefully it's going to be exciting. Obviously our focus at this point, because all of you are teachers, trainers, coaches, we're going to be looking at the teacher perspective. What do we mean by teacher well-being? Well, there are a number of things. You can see these 6 items here in this list. They're going to be, I'd say there's a lot of movement in here if you look at it. Okay, letting someone in, sorry. So it's a complex dynamic state. What does that mean? It means that there's a lot of movement, as I said, in it. We're looking at the mental and the physical balance, so both aspects of it. And the fact that we always keep coming back to balance means that it's something that we strive to achieve, some sort of balance. But of course, in reality, it's always sometimes up, sometimes down. I think it's very difficult, and there's that sense of perfectionism, right? That we're looking at, this is how things should be. Who says, right? So for you to understand how you feel about this sort of state, I think the word dynamic is the best. Yes, of course, it's complex. Everything is complex. But if we're looking at dynamics, what we see is that there's constant movement, which also helps us to accept more what is going on in our lives, in our professional lives, regarding our roles, regarding expectations, regarding, what we want to do, like in the next few weeks. Is it a straight linear line? Of course not. There are going to be ups and downs. There are so many factors that we need to take into account nowadays. I think everyone's experiencing it. It's not an easy thing to do. We also look at well-being with a focus of development, joy, support, but not only at a personal level, but at an organizational level, okay? That's always something we have to keep in mind, that it's not only about one teacher trying to be very focused on their own well-being, because there's always an organization, some kind of company or a language school or whatnot, your own private business in which your well-being is going to be ingrained, right? It's a part of it, okay? And that also means that there's going to be interaction there from that perspective. So we're always going to be looking at how we see it in the environment that it is in. So what does this mean? We're looking at 3 different items here. We're looking at flexibility, we're looking at adaptability and elasticity. And the 3 seem very, very similar, okay? But there are going to be nuances. There are going to be differences. You can see the graphics there. They're going to perhaps show you how they are different. And the questions here also might highlight a few things. So where is there change in your career? How often does your routine change? What sort of highlights do you have in your career? How do you handle challenges and changes, of course? And what is next? What's around the corner for you? So a little bit of food for thought to just think about these. So how do you manage, like I've noticed lately, probably I'm growing old, I don't know, but I find it particularly painful to handle change. It's very unsettling. It never used to be an issue. It's becoming an issue. I'm aware of it. I'm working on it. It's still painful, but I'm working on it, okay? So what do we mean by these 3 words? So flexibility, adaptability, and elasticity. So flexibility would be more of an operational, I'm just looking at my notes here a bit because it's relatively recent in my research. So it's going to be something which is very operational and immediate. So it's a reactive sort of aspect of it, okay? So we're looking at functional reactions. That's what I would say, okay? So that's flexibility here. So on a daily basis, am I able to react? Okay, so that's going to be the flexibility. The adaptability is more of a planned and organized aspect of the way that I'm approaching change, let's say. And it's going to be a response to the environment, okay? So I'm adapting to something, okay? Flexibility is me, myself, how I am. Adaptability is with the environment. And elasticity, we might say that it's very similar to them, but actually that's going to be much more about resilience and recovery. Like if you're looking at the different elastics there. So how you bounce back, right? Something happens, how you're able to not only to react and change, but if necessary, to go back to what was, okay? So these are the three different aspects, I think, of change that I wanted to help you look at and identify. I think it's a very interesting way to look at your own career, the way that your routines are, your daily happenings, if you will. Because I work with larger organizations, companies, multinationals, my focus is usually on the way that they handle this sort of thing. How have they changed? How have their experience, their expectations changed? Now, if we're looking at like what companies want, many years ago, the language course was an extra perk. It was like, oh, you've been really good. Okay, we'll give you a bit of English training or some English teaching so that you can develop, right? Now it is essential. It is vital. If someone does not speak a language, I'm not just talking about English, it depends which part of the globe you're on. If you are not able to reach out towards the global economy, towards supply chains, then there are going to be serious issues with your organization unless you are so, again, ingrained in the local community that you don't necessarily need an international network. But coming back here, what they want from learning a language, communicating in the target language, they want to enhance their communication and their collaboration with others. They want their reach to be much bigger. They want to be able to have stronger relationships with others in their various forms. And of course, it's also going to help them to learn because they're going to have access to more literature, to more websites, to more people. So they're going to be able to innovate and be more creative, okay? And as you can see, quite a lot of things have changed. We're looking from structure to communication. We're looking from language in general to specific needs support with the language that we have, classroom-based to personalized and multilingual, multicultural work environments, okay? So these all come into play when we're looking at well-being for our learners, okay? So that's going to be the lens that we have. Now, one thing that I always emphasize that it's about quite a lot of skills. I've put them into 4 clusters. I think these are now in the World Economic Forum, not these specifically, but in general, the different skills that are essential in the 21st century. Every year there's a new edition and they're changing, they go up and down. It's like a top 20, top of the pops, you know. But most of these are constant for language learners. Why are these important? These are going to help language learners and of course ourselves, going to help us and them to be able to perform better, to develop as language learners. And they're going to enable faster, better, deeper change and to support their well-being. Okay, so everything is always connected with everything in the way that I put this together, okay? So we're going to be looking at this with a well-being lens, then these all help, right? So we've got active learning. How does that help well-being? Well, it helps with our flexibility, the adaptability, you remember those 3. So there's that self-management cluster as such. And of course, communication skills are essential nowadays. If you cannot communicate, if your soft skills are lacking, then they're either going to send you off to a training to deal with that, so to say, or you're going to have issues and you're not going to be able to communicate with all the people that you have to. Complex thinking, again, so higher order cognitive skills, essential nowadays. And these are things which we do need to help our learners to be better with, to be able to understand how they're thinking, their meta level thinking. And of course, the social emotional skills are also essential. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail here. Moving on. So we've got this thing called work-life balance. Okay, so moving on to this. I deliberately drew not a particularly happy face on that person because it's not about a balance. It's never a balance. It's a very unfair thing to say we've got work on the one hand and then we've got life on the other. How does that even, I mean, work is part of life, right? So how can we even try to, and the thing is, on the side where we have life, let's say, there's so much in there. If you look at it, all the things that we actually love to do. And if we're lucky, then work is also something that we really love to do. If we're passionate and we're driven and like, I love doing this. But there's also the side of it where you're not too happy, either for a number of reasons. A lot of factors can be there. And then it pulls you down, right? So I don't like looking at it like there's work and there's life and there's a balance. There's no such thing. Work is a part of life. I never understood how this can be called this way. I call it something. I think they're all part of a pie chart and work is part of everything else. And if you look at it, I drew this, I mean, it's fantastic. It looks like a person standing there. I mean, that is the whole person, but work is also part of it. So making this kind of distinction is so very, very unfair, I think. And it puts a lot of pressure on us that, yes, I have to get my life organized, whatever. And of course, I've got my work. I don't know. I don't like that dialogue. A lot of things have also changed in terms of what sort of responsibilities teachers have. We're looking at changes which I think are fundamental, and we're still looking at this balancing act right here. If you think about the different roles and responsibilities teachers have, there's so much. We have to take care of our CPD. Nobody's really going to do that for us. We have to go and find ways to develop, right? We have to have this thing about our well-being because it's now in the global conscious. We need to have some kind of global outlook on the profession as such. So it's not, I'm a teacher. Okay, what kind of teacher, how, where, when, what are your plans? What do you want to do? So it's not as simple as it used to be. We're looking at how we can integrate technology, innovate, develop either our business or ourselves. Most of us have some sort of business connection because we ourselves are entrepreneurs or not. We're looking at how we can be collaborating, networking all the time. And of course, we've got the roles that we have in the classroom, right? So we can be coaches, mentors, we can be some sort of support for the learners that we're working with. And of course, there's a lot of management in the work that we do. So the question is, how do these work out for us? And just to remind you, do have questions. Towards the end, we're going to address them. So if there's anything that you want to make a note of, please do, but I'm just simply not going to be able to see the notes here. What else do we have? So what I would say is that we need to be looking at a change in the practice, how the teacher sees themselves, and also how they see the well-being of themselves. And I'd like a much more, I'd say it's more of a pie chart, right? I chose a beach ball because it's fun, but it's pie chart. So what we're looking at, yes, we do have personal professional growth. It's part of it. Also, our hobbies and leisures, home and practical life, purpose and contribution, meaning. It's part of positive psychology, very important for us to know where we are heading, and that we are supported, we are needed, what we are doing has meaning, contributes to something. Obviously, the physical side, the health and self-care, and of course, relationships and community. So I think what is important is for us to see where it is that we are putting more energy, time, we have more commitments, and where is it that we don't. And of course, we don't like talking about it now. It's no longer popular, but during COVID, these changed a lot. Probably most of us are back to normal or not. We've changed, we've developed, we've become more aware of certain things. A lot of people are much more aware of healthcare and community because those were struck, right? So there were some issues there. So these are things that I think we should be looking at when we're talking about well-being as teachers. But of course, it's not only for teachers, for educators in general, for anyone for that matter. So there are a couple of things that we might want to consider. I'm just going to read these out, and again, let them settle for you. And what are your initial reactions to these questions? Okay. So how do you prioritize your own well-being as a teacher? Obviously, this has been asked a lot of times. What about boundaries in your classroom? And obviously, whose boundaries? Not physical boundaries, right? Psychological, very often. How do you communicate these boundaries to students, to colleagues, to superiors, perhaps? How does that work? What are the dynamics around that? Do you have stress triggers? Are you aware of them? How do you manage them? Are you kind and understanding towards yourself when things are challenging? Not when it's easy. It's easy when it's easy, but when it's hard, then it's not easy. And what are your own personal, professional development goals? And how do you make time for them? Because it's one thing that you have a goal, and it's another thing that you don't do anything with it because you don't have time, energy, priority, whatever. So looking at these together, these all stronger awareness is going to help you to be keener on establishing a good relationship with yourself, which is essential. And to be able to move forward and say, yes, it's important for me. Today, I wanted to go for a walk. I did. I really did in the morning, but it was cold. I was sleepy. I was lacking my coffee, and I just jumped into work, and I worked. And today at 4:30, 1.5 hours ago, I said, okay, that's it. I've done everything I wanted today, and I went for a walk. I met the neighbors. I had a lovely chat, and I felt energized. It's worth it. It's worth investing that time. This was a very easy thing to do, but it felt good that I actually went for a walk. It didn't matter actually how much. So just sometimes it's really small things that are going to help. So what about these boundaries? Well, clearly we want to look at it from a number of perspectives. And it's not only about setting the boundaries, but it's also about honoring your own and others. And as you can see, there's definitely going to be interplay between the two spheres. And what we have there is what we see is that we have to communicate clearly, consistently. We need to know what sort of boundary we are lacking, or we need, or we are honoring for others. Maybe it's, for example, a time boundary. Maybe it really is a physical boundary. Like, I've got teenage kids. I know when I shouldn't go in. Really shouldn't even knock on that door. So there's going to be something there. Okay, letting somebody in. Is that boundary going to be reflecting a need that I have identified for myself? Or as a coach, am I helping my client discover and understand unmet needs that they can identify and understand, and then create a boundary around that? Are we looking at something to promote some sort of role model that we want to become, or we see and we want to, maybe we aspire to be? Are we looking to build a supportive environment that will create fertile ground for boundary setting? And are we able to have some sort of flexibility with and around our boundaries and others, so that they don't become suits of armor, because that's also not going to be helpful. So after some time, we're going to suffocate. So a lot of things to be looking at. Now, the literature as such, I'll have a list of literature at the end. What we're looking at is different aspects for the individual and also for the organization. Take a look for a moment. So what we see is what we can control, what we can do to be realistic about moving forward, developing, being more aware of what is good for me, handling our stress, really having realistic boundaries, to take on a more active role in finding support. And I like support better than help. Help, I think, might have in our heads sometimes a bit of a negative connotation. Support is a positive thing. We reach out, say, can you just check this with me? I'm a bit stuck with this. Yeah, sure. Knowing when we have to prioritize our health. Been there, done that. I think everyone's been in a situation when you have to say no to something because it's just not possible. It's not going to work out. You look at ways to be more agentic, which means that you are taking an active role to do something for yourself, whatever that might be. And planning, not just ad hoc, how your professional development is going to move forward in the coming. You can do short-term, mid-term, long-term. So you can do in the next few weeks. Is there one thing that I can do for my career? Mid-term, in the next few months, till the end of summer, what can I do? And then in the long run, of course, in the next 1 or 2 years, which direction am I moving? And the same for organizations. They need to create a certain kind of culture that is going to be supportive of the well-being of their employees. Okay, I'm not going to go through them one by one, okay, because I'm aware of the time, but just moving on a bit, okay? Not everything is the individual's responsibility. We're going to hear about this at the conference. We're going to have a plenary speaker who's going to be speaking a full hour just about this, okay? So very exciting. So what is it that we need to take into account? Our self-awareness, being aware of what those points are that are going to trigger the frustration for us, and we're going to be very tense about. Be more reflective. Have the time to think, whether you're journaling or you're having a discussion with your students, your colleagues, whoever. Be more aware of the array of positive emotions that are available for you and your learners. Talk about them with your students. Have that positive lens. look at how you and your learners can build a bridge and create a more supportive environment in the classroom. Just by having that conversation, it can happen, it can realize. Small things, instead of saying why you didn't, ask how can you. It's just small things. Have that growth mindset and be open to learn about so many things. Obviously, that's why you're here. And of course, if we're talking about well-being, very difficult not to talk about Seligman's PERMA model. PERMA, because it's PERMAH, as you can see there, positive emotion, the engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishment, health. Everybody has strengths in this, what they pay more attention to, what they receive more freely, what they wish to work on, and which one or ones there are which they might simply brush into the corner, brush aside and say, not now. But just because it's been brushed aside doesn't mean that it isn't important. All six of them are equally important when we're thinking about ourselves and how we are balanced. I'm using quotation marks here, balanced. Why has this become such a big thing? Now, this is a graphic that I worked on quite a lot earlier for a project. But I think it sort of visualizes very much what can happen. And you can think of family, student, on the street, in the shops, anywhere. So these situations, these scenarios can happen anywhere. And they might be very extreme, but they can happen. When emotions are running high, when we don't feel okay, then that comes into the classroom. Our learners are going to take on that tension. They're going to take on the perhaps disinterest, the low motivation that I'm bringing into the classroom, low self-esteem. I'm not confident in what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. They're going to see. And whether we like it or not, we are role models for our learners in a number of ways, not only linguistically, but because of our role of teacher, whether we like it or not. Very often it's not going to be a partnership like in coaching, but in teaching, it's more going to be they're looking up to us, right? So tell me what to do. And if I go in with all the stuff which is holding me back from being truly in a well-being state, if there is such a thing, or more aware of what I need, then things like that might happen. I'm not saying it will, it might. Whereas in the bottom picture, we might have some kind of problem or issue, but we can observe it and we can talk about it, we can probe it, and we can find solutions together because we're in a much more balanced state and we can find solutions and we can help. What is also important is addressing this from the glimmer perspective. And we may have heard of them. Glimmers are these, it's the opposite of a trigger. Trigger is something which is really negative and I think everybody knows what a trigger is. I don't have to define it. It's something which is going to make you very stressed, unhappy, angry even, so very strong emotions, but negative emotions. And a glimmer, if you just think about it, it's a little ray of sunshine. It's a small thing that is going to help you. Exactly, it's going to give you that tiny little smile that you might have been looking for all day, right? So a glimmer is going to be something where you have the learner just for a moment forget perhaps that they wrote a bad test, or they're getting ready for a presentation, or they have exams to sit, whatever the situation is, say, okay, but look, the sun is shining. Or how lovely that we have some flowers here on the desk. You know, it's just a small thing, but it can set the tone. You can bring it in, and as you can see, it's going to help everybody. And you can look for these glimmers, these small glimmers. What's one good thing that you've done this week? You know, it just setting that tone, that positivity. So there are a few things that we can do. We can take some steps, and not literally, but we can notice the sunshine. We can bring in more empathy and be more compassionate with ourselves and also with our learners. And be okay, let go, and feel comfortable enough in your shoes, in your body, to be vulnerable, and allow the same for your learners. And with that, you can balance, but by balancing, I mean a dynamic balance that you can create together with your learners, redefine yourselves, and find some sort of boundaries which are okay for all of us, for us and for them also. So we have to be proactively protecting these, if you will. Because if I'm affected, then my department or wherever I might be working is going to be affected. And if that's effective, then the staff as such is going to be affected, and the whole organization is going to be affected. And it starts with me. I'm responsible for what I do, nobody else. So it can be an excuse to say, well, but the organization, the company, the school, whatever, yes. But there are things that I can do, and I can start thinking about differently. So definitely look at having an approach where you can support your learners and be relevant for them. If you want, you can specialize. There are a lot of flexible learning options that you can be offering. You can be measuring, sharing results. That's also part of it, having that consistent progress and future progress on mind. You can also be looking as such at how you can network with businesses. You can offer emotional support, more communication elements, and you can impact your organizational culture, but you do have to make an effort. You need to understand what is going on. And these are my resources. We've come to the end. And that's it. And I'm very happy to send the slides if anybody wants to. And our details of the Malaga conference are on this QR code. So thank you very, very much for being here, for listening to me. I'm going to stop sharing so that if there's anything in the chat, I can see that. Let me see how I'm going to do that now. I'm going to stop sharing now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Here we are. Okay. So thank you very, very much for being here. And first of all, are there any questions, anything that is perhaps unclear, or you'd like to ask anything about it? I went a bit over time, but I think I'm still okay. No questions, comments, anything? I don't know.
I have a comment, Gabriella. So thank you very much for that thought-provoking lecture or presentation. And I noted 4 points I would like to share a little bit, but shortly. And thank you, Caroline, for this work-life flow. And I connected in my mind with work-life integration. So I also don't use work-life balance because if I feel exactly the same, Gabriella, as you said. I don't feel that dynamic. I feel insecure if I have to balance my private life with my work life, and actually I can never balance them. I can integrate them into just one thing. And
Mhm.
just referring to that task of teachers, I think now we approach some extra task for teachers nowadays, connected very often with promoting educational services, organizing courses, convincing students to attend courses at all or attend workshops. I deal with that daily. It's in my university, but also to communicate our work, our professional development to the very broad environment via social media. So we not only learn, we not only develop, but we feel sometimes, or some of us feel obliged to communicate that outside. And I feel it as an extra task for me. So I don't know how you other participants feel about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I agree. This balance thing, I think it's a very old model now, and it doesn't describe what is going on in our lives as such. So integration, flow, yeah, I like those. I'm going to look into them. And the other thing that you mentioned here was this communicating with students, motivating in a way, and there's a lot of extra, might say administration, but definitely extra work relating to um, getting the students into the classes. Like you're in tertiary, right? You're at university, so that's your angle. Any comments on this aspect of teaching? Has anyone got any experience about that? Yeah, Sylvia, hi.
Gabriella. Thank you. It was really, really interesting and very pertinent with, I had a coaching thing yesterday and we talked about stress and well-being, and it
Mm,
ties
yeah,
in perfectly. Um, just about explaining yourself sometimes to the students to sort of to be more credible or make them really realize that you're serious, that you're not just a teacher just standing there. You've got some background, you've studied, you work
yeah.
on these things, and it is extra time to develop and sell yourself and share it, but it's important. So it's hard to figure out how to do that
Look at
the
that.
least
Yeah,
stressful as possible.
yeah, absolutely. And I think whereas earlier it wasn't such a thing to kind of sell, or maybe sell is not the right word, but to establish our credibility, right? But now it's much more like I have to prove that I'm I wouldn't say worthy of, but I'm valuable to you, dear student. You really should listen to me. We're in this together. I'm here to teach you, like as teacher, and I can give you something which is of value for you. But I have to prove that first, and then they're willing to do it, right? So that there could be a shift around that of somehow getting the attention, getting the validation from them that yes, we can go ahead together. Because otherwise, it's going to be an uphill struggle because they're not going to. Obviously, again, this is, we're going to have two ends of the spectrum. You're going to have classes, students that don't need any sort of pestering, and on the other end, you're going to have people who really need very long discussions and proof and explanations, whatever, of why we're doing what we're doing. Carolyn, yes, anything you'd like to share here with these themes, Carolyn?
Not really. I think everybody knows that you have to start out with the information about you that's going to resonate with the group. And as most of you know, Americans could care less about academic credentials.
Mm.
That is much more important with Europeans and Asians.
Mm.
I happen to have a degree in chemistry, which I never used, but I made sure that the manufacturing people I work with know that I'm not some fluffy liberal arts major, which can be their concept of us as well.
Yeah. That's also an aspect. I'm not quite sure whether Kazia was thinking of that, because I think it's much more in the classroom, you know, and not professional credibility, but more like what we're doing together, you know, so like proving that I'm not sure, maybe I'm getting it completely wrong, but
Well, I think there are two pieces to it. There's the upfront, because for sure they're gonna Google your name and find out about you.
Yeah.
But then in the classroom, if you don't have some firmness at the beginning that you know what you're doing,
Mm.
or you kind of let go, then you know, those are all the things that we have to struggle with. Not struggle, it can be fun. Sometimes you can say,
a fun struggle.
yeah, but you just have to be cognizant of it.
Yeah, I think it's much more nowadays about awareness, and there are so many more things we need to be aware of than perhaps earlier. So that's a shift into that direction of knowing what is going on and knowing how to respond to it, and quickly, fast. So the pace, sorry, has changed. So that's also an issue, perhaps. Right. Okay. Is there anything else? I'm very happy to sort of let today go, and send me an email or send Esteban an email, and then I'm very happy to send the slides, because that's the point of the whole thing. And if anybody didn't see the video, of course, then it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So again, thank you very much for being here. It's been an honor, and hopefully meet you in Malaga. If not in Malaga, then online in some form in the future. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and bye-bye. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.